Prime Minister Keir Starmer and our Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has said they're going to smash the gangs. Hi guys, Matt Goodwin here on GBNews. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Now listen, immigration is the #1 issue for British people. If you look at the opinion polls, it's above the economy, it's above the National Health Service, and it's no secret as to why so many people are concerned about this issue. Our borders are completely broken. We have the small boat crisis, which since 2018 has now brought nearly 150,000 illegal migrants into our country. What we've been seeing in Britain, a political class, an industrial charity complex, an elite expert community that has been falling over itself to help hundreds of thousands of people break our laws and enter our country illegally. This is costing us an enormous amount of money. It is estimated, according to estimates this month, November 2024, that the illegal migration crisis is costing the British taxpayer up to £18 billion. To put that in context, we just took winter fuel payments off pensioners to save £1.5 billion, and we've just smashed family farms up and down this country with new taxes to save around £2 billion. But we are spending £18 billion trying to manage this broken asylum system. Now, the Labour Party say they've got a plan to fix this issue, but this plan makes absolutely no sense. Prime Minister Keir Starmer and our Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has said they're going to smash the gangs. Well, ask yourself a question. If smashing the gangs hasn't worked in the war on drugs over the last half century, then why on earth would it work in the war on illegal migration? All we're doing at the moment under this Labour policy is playing a national game of whack-a-mole. You take one gang of people smugglers off the board and another one pops up to fill its place. Now, because Labour have removed the Rwanda policy, which was brought in by the previous Conservative government, whereby illegal migrants would be detained and deported to Rwanda and have their claims processed there, because Labour's removed that policy, we now have no active deterrent. We have no way of discouraging people from making the hazardous journey across the Channel. Even worse, the Labour Party has basically agreed to give asylum to around 60,000 people who have entered Britain illegally, allowing them to stay in the country, encouraging and incentivising many more people to come, because they know, like those who have been allowed to stay, that Britain is a soft touch. In fact, if you do enter the country illegally, you can see just how much we will fall over ourselves to help you. You'll get a cash card, you'll get a smartphone, you'll get access to healthcare, private healthcare in some cases. You'll get access to the education system. We'll put you in a hotel or accommodation, which is exactly why other European countries like France are laughing at just how soft we are when it comes to managing illegal migration. This crisis really matters, not only because it's making a mockery of our claim to be a self-governing, independent, sovereign nation, it also matters because it's rapidly eroding trust in our democratic system. Nobody voted for this. Nobody wants this crisis, and everybody in Britain, large majorities, are utterly fed up with the failure of the political class to put the safety and the security of ordinary tax-paying British people first. So look, if you want to resolve this crisis, here's what you need to do. As a country, we would need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, or the ECHR. That would allow us to reclaim judicial independence and control over our own laws. At the moment, the ECHR is used by illegal migrants, asylum seekers, and foreign national offenders to prevent themselves from being removed from the country, from being deported. In fact, so ludicrous is the state of affairs that we've recently had individuals who have been deported out of Britain, smuggled their way back into Britain, and then used the ECHR to stay in the country on the grounds that being deported might affect their mental health. We also need to reform, if not repeal, previous acts of Parliament, like the Human Rights Act, which was brought in by Tony Blair, which is used by an increasingly activist legal industry to weaponize laws in order to protect people who enter our country illegally. And third, we need an active deterrent, like the Rwanda policy, but one without the legal loopholes that Rishi Sunak had left in that agreement. We need to ensure that the laws of our country are put before laws and courts outside of our country. Now, if we do those three things, if we leave the ECHR, if we reform or repeal the Human Rights Act, and if we have an active deterrent, we will be able to solve the small boats crisis. But more fundamentally, we will be able to restore public trust in democracy and our institutions. We will be able to keep the British people safe and secure in their own country. And we will also be able to do something else that many people in Westminster and the elite class seem completely incapable of doing. Namely, treat the British people with the respect and the decency that they deserve. Now, I wanted to share some personal thoughts with you today about why I appear on GB News, because I think it tells us a lot about how the institutions, about how legacy media, about how the national conversation are all failing to represent and respect the views of millions of ordinary people. Now, look, I've been appearing on the channel now for a couple of years, and the reason that I've committed to GB News is because I look at the institutions, perhaps like many of you. I look at the legacy media, I look at the established television channels, I look at the institutions, the publishing industry, the cultural institutions, the museums and the galleries, and I just see an old ecosystem that isn't representing the views of ordinary working people. And why is that? Well, look, I think if you look at the people who work in those institutions, they tend to come from the same social backgrounds. They often went to the same schools, the same universities. They tend to share the same socially liberal or radically woke values. They see the world in the same way. And really, they only represent the views and the values of about 15% of the country. They lean into this liberal consensus among the elite, which leaves millions of other people feeling as though they're not really in the conversation at all. I mean, ask yourself a question. When you look at the adverts on television, when you look at the books in the bestseller charts, when you listen to the debates on legacy media, do you really feel as though you're represented and respected in that national conversation? Because too often, the people who dominate the most important, the most influential institutions in our society, well, while they're obsessed with racial, sexual and gender diversity, they show absolutely no interest in political diversity, in having a diverse range of opinions and beliefs put forward by people from ordinary backgrounds. That's why public trust in the legacy media, in the old media, is collapsing across much of the Western world. That's why public trust and confidence in institutions like the universities is collapsing across much of the Western world. Because people aren't stupid. They can see that the national conversation, the public square, what one writer has called the constitution of knowledge, has been reshaped and whittled down so that it only represents the views and opinions of a 15% elite minority, which has left the forgotten majority, people like you and me, feeling as though we're not really in this conversation at all. This isn't only about GB News, but this is about a new media ecosystem that's emerging across the West. It's reflected in the changing direction of Twitter, or now X. It's reflected in the rise of things like Substacks, YouTube channels, an alternative ecosystem, which is saying we're not just going to talk about the 15% of people in Western democracies. We're going to represent the forgotten majority. We're going to put their values, their views, their opinions, their perspectives on the table. Because fundamentally, in my mind at least, what this is about are two very different visions of power. There is a vision that argues the true source of power, legitimacy, and authority lies with elites, and that the main relationship in our democracies, in our societies, is a horizontal relationship from one group of elites to another group of elites. Now that's a vision of power that dominates the institutions, the legacy media. They view themselves as being above and beyond everybody else. My vision of power I think your vision of power, I think the vision of power that's held by institutions and new media like GBNews is very different. We argue that the true source of power, legitimacy and authority lies not with the elite class, but with you, the people. We believe that it's you, the people, who should be in charge of the decisions that affect your daily lives. And that relationship isn't horizontal, it's vertical. It runs from you, the people, to those who you elect to represent you on your behalf and those who you want to speak on your behalf. So this isn't just about new and old media. This is about power, and this is about how we think and understand power in our contemporary societies. So it's good to have you with us. It's good to have you listening, and it's good to have you sharing our content and connecting and engaging with us. So don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'll see you soon. Power to the people.